think an incredibly important issue was touched in during the last interview, and that was the issue of migrants and the standpoint of Pope Francis on this, because when we talk about migrants, we talk very much so about a massive passion of Pope Francis. And in many, many ways, this was not only a passion of his because of what he saw, but what his family went through, coming from a family of migrants. Just as we talk to the issue of migrants, I also want to talk to some of the visuals you're seeing on your screen, because we're building up to when the funeral is about to begin in about a half an hour's time. So a lot of the guests, a lot of the dignitaries are arriving, and as you can see, that is the coffin of the Pope that is waiting to be transferred into the square where the funeral will be taking place. So these are all things that you're going to be seeing taking live. But just if we can talk a little bit on the issue of migrants and his stand on that. Annemarie, let me begin with you. Let's talk to his stance on it.
Absolutely huge, and I think, as you said, it was shaped very much by his experience growing up. That, he was came from a family who had escaped fascism in Italy, who moved to Argentina, and then, as he was working as a young boy, going to see his father, he realized that he was engaging with the Poles, for example, who were coming from the war, the Second World War. They were escaping Germany. And he, I think, had a real sense of their suffering and the kind of stories that he would hear in his family home. So he was formed by that early experience very, very powerfully, I think. And I think it's very telling that his very first move outside of Rome was to the island of Lampedusa in 2013, that he wanted to be there to express his compassion, his solidarity with those who had died trying to reach the shores of Europe from Africa. So it's huge.
And Monsignor, who can forget that image of that little boy face down on a beach, dead? That really touched Francis's heart to an extent that he met with the boy's father. And, I mentioned this at the top, where he met with J.D. Vance, U.S. Vice President. Donald Trump is present at the funeral today. He might not have agreed with the policies, but still going and offering a so-called olive branch to meet and to hear them out. What does that say about the man?
Well, a pope, so the word pope means father, and so his job, if you like, is to be a father to the Christian church. But he has this double role. He's also a sovereign. He's a head of a very small state, but a state that is really one of the oldest of the modern states and has diplomatic representation around the world, and diplomats are represented to the Holy See. And so very much more than inviting people to come, people would ask to come. So the American vice president must have asked to come. It is very much how it works. He would meet with everybody, whether they were democratically elected or dictators, we might say, or from countries that are closer to one's heart or experience or not. It was of no particular difference. And so interpreting for those meetings and seeing the way he interacted with people was very humbling. It was just to welcome people. He would welcome ambassadors. He met with several US presidents, not just so President Trump, but we were there when he met with President Obama, and so you saw generations, if you like, of different leaders coming, and whether they were Catholic or Christian or not made no difference to him. He was there to receive them in the diplomatic role, but also as human beings, and to listen. And some of those encounters were very moving, so.
Thank you, Father. So I want to just draw attention to a lot of the visuals that we've been seeing, and particularly the dignitaries that have been arriving. So a little bit earlier, probably about 15 minutes ago, we saw the former president of the US, Joe Biden, arriving. So he's arrived at St. Peter's Square, and with his wife Jill Biden as well by his side. So that was a glimpse that we did get into that as well. We also saw the arrival of Norway's Crown Prince Haakon and Crown Princess Marit. They arrived at the funeral. We also saw Sweden's king arriving. We saw the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He was there as well, and also the head of the EU. We saw her arriving there a little bit earlier on. Right. So, we're still waiting to see even more. There was I I think at one point a worry that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wouldn't attend, but I think he is attending now. I think that has been confirmed. I'm not sure. Sophie, do we have confirmation? Is he attending?
It's not clear yet.
Still not clear, okay.
You're having the former presidents arriving and other important dignitaries. We'll see the sitting president arriving, and it's only then we can have a sense whether Zelensky will
actually be able to
be there. Because the problem here, those attacks in the past 48 hours became very, very problematic.
There you see US President Donald Trump walking in with his wife Melania into St. Peter's Basilica, the coffin, a simple coffin, Monsignor, as you see on your screen. The other coffins of the past popes, help me understand, it was possibly 3 in 1, made up of cypress, elm, as well as lead. This is a single with wood and lead. Help us understand the significance of that.
It was the Holy Father's choice to simplify it, but if you look back to the funeral of Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul, it's very similar. From the outside, it looks very similar. They chose simple pine coffins, so we have a very stark image of the Book of Gospels lying open on Pope John Paul's pine coffin 20 years ago, this month. But Pope Francis, yes, he wanted to even simplify that further, you know. There is, you would like to have it properly sealed, and as you say, with indications of his papacy, in a sense, for the future. But yes, what you see is, and that's really who he was. What you see is what you get. You know, that's very much him.
Yes, and I think it really speaks to the humility of the man, that he wanted to simplify these traditions. He wanted just that one simple coffin rather than the 3 interlocking ones. And, you know, just to have that simple inscription, you know, Franciscus, all of that is very much part of who Francis was, I think. Pope Francis was just that man of simplicity.
Yes, so, the People's Pope. I mean, I remember when he went to Uganda, I mean, the whole program was people-centered. Ordinary people, congregants and Ugandans could get very, very close to the Pope, including us journalists, including accommodating cultural activities. And he was so happy all the way until the end of the trip. And I think that coffin symbolized who the Pope was in terms of being the people's Pope.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so we continue to watch as a lot of the dignitaries are arriving now. We just saw the US President and his wife Melania coming, and we'll continue to have this going. But there is just another story that we need to get to very quickly. SABC News reporter Nanjabulo Makamu is in KwaMakuta in rural KwaZulu-Natal. She's in conversation with a Catholic family just to see how they are feeling at this point in time. So let's check in with her. All right, we'll try and keep on getting that link going, but let's just go back to the visuals, and these are happening live right now on your screen. So within about 20 minutes from now, the program is going to begin, and this is quite an intense program, isn't it? Father, perhaps you want to talk us a little bit through what we can expect as we, that hour hits 10 o'clock. We're seeing the dignitaries arrive and being seated, but when we start and who's presiding over it and all of these issues.
So the Holy Father's coffin is inside the Basilica. It's at what is called the Confession of St. Peter. So where Peter, if you like, professed his faith by giving his life. So it's right above the place where the Apostle Peter was buried, at the heart of the church. He'll be brought out onto the steps, onto the Sagrado, it's called, onto the flat area where the altar has been constructed outside. But St. Peter's Square is not just symbolic and recognizable, but so much has happened here over the centuries. Rome finished at the river. You can see in the background the Tiber. That's where the ancient city finished. This is outside the city. And what was outside the city? The emperor's chariot track and a cemetery, a large cemetery, parts of which are still hidden underground. And Peter was buried as a criminal, if you like, outside. He was crucified upside down outside of the city. The Christians took him down, buried him. And so this piazza, the square, has seen events of great joy and great sadness. You know, really in some ways drenched in the blood of early martyrs. The early Roman emperors were particularly cruel to anybody who didn't share the faith of the Romans, the Roman gods. But it has become a place of celebration, but of great symbolism. You know, here the popes are usually announced when they've been chosen. There we see the white smoke. You can't see it here, but the Sistine Chapel is behind the basilica. Bernini's great pillars, which were built in the modern basilica. So the church you see now is about 500 years old. The old St. Peter's, built by Constantine, was smaller, was 1,000 years old when it was taken down in the 1500s. So yeah, you see the Masters of Ceremony, Monsignor Sapienza, the regent of the papal household. You see those who worked directly with the Holy Father, the various Masters of Ceremony, the Papal Master of Ceremonies. So, you know, the whole family, if you like, of the Pope is here. Not biological, but there is literally the papal household, that's what it's called. And there are those who serve him directly and others who work with him on a daily basis.
His biological family, and I'd like to touch on that for a moment, because I mean, I know once you become Pope, things change. Obviously, they change. But also another thing, it's wonderful to see all denominations, all religions being represented there, and that goes without say. But just in terms of his family, he has one surviving sister. That's correct. Hey, one surviving sister. Obviously, the rest have passed on. But that's will she be there? Do we know? I'm not sure.
I don't know for sure, but
I was
would
really
imagine
trying
she
to
will
find
be.
this out. I was trying to find this out, and you know, it was just interesting to see. And he has, I think, nieces and nephews as well, and you know,
I
you wonder
believe,
sort of their role in all of this. But I suppose when you do become the Pope and you take up a position like that, you know, the rest sort of.
Right.
He never went home to Argentina,
right.
And it was a bittersweet note, you know, and not because he didn't love his country, but because he belonged to the world,
to the
if you
world,
like, to the church in the world.
Yeah.
And he was intending to go back, and people kept wondering when, but he didn't, you know.
Yeah.
There's a sense that you are there to serve, and you will probably, as he has done, die in the job, you know, with his boots on, working, praying and working.
With the ceremony last night, with the sealing of the coffin, I believe there were some family members part of that.
Yeah. Simple, beautiful photograph there. There's the Argentinian president.
So there's going to be a bit of a seating arrangement. We understand that Argentina and Italy will be up front, and then, if I'm not mistaken, monarchy, and then you'll have the other heads of state sitting there. Clergy, 252 cardinals. We understand that out of the 252 cardinals, there's about 135 that are cardinal electors, which means they're allowed to vote. Out of the 135 cardinals, Francis appointed 108.
Exactly.
Right.
But we just want to, as we head to 10 minutes before the start of this funeral, talk to some of the dignitaries that have been arriving. And fast and furiously, we saw the French president paying his last respects as well, Emmanuel Macron, as well as his wife, Brigitte Macron. We also saw the Argentinian president make his way in just before we left you, and also the Brazilian president also there, Lula da Silva. We have got confirmation that Volodymyr Zelensky is in attendance. He is there. Also saw a first arrival of the US President Donald Trump, and many, many more dignitaries are arriving. It's getting closer and closer to the start of this all. Father, if I can bring you in, because you have been telling us so many interesting things and some of the landmarks that are there and the things that are happening at this moment. Perhaps you want to talk to us about some of these visuals unfolding right now.
You know, it's not the origin of the Christian faith. That would be Jerusalem and the Holy Land. But in many ways, it is the practical center of the Christian world, for Catholics certainly, but for many, you know. And so this church is really a funeral memorial church. St. Peter's is not a cathedral. It's built over the place where a man gave his life who sat at table with Jesus, the fisherman Peter, you know. And it is the funeral church, very large one, over the place of martyrdom of the Apostle Peter. So Pope Francis, one of his titles, and it's a beautiful one, is called simply the successor of the Apostle, or the successor of Peter, you know. So we look to him as the guarantee of unity of the church. More than the man himself, the particular man, it is this ongoing thread of continuity, you know, which takes us back to the Last Supper and to the upper room. And so Pope Francis has fulfilled that role, you know, for 12 years. And so this massive basilica means a royal church or a church of some particular significance, was then built between 1506 and 1626. Took more than a century, multiple popes. You know, many were involved, Michelangelo and multiple sculptors and artists. Took another 100 years for the interior. You're looking at the cross of St. Andrew, patron of Scotland, Andrew the Apostle, just in the background behind those who are arriving to venerate the Pope. We're looking at the side altar of St. Joseph, where the apostles, the relics of Simon and Jude are kept. There are confessionals in the background. The Swiss Guards are on duty. They have served the popes for 5 centuries. Young men from Switzerland who have to be Catholic and a certain height and practicing the faith, and they're normally there for a few years. Some are single, others are married. Those with the purple or violet sashes are from the Secretariat of State. They are interpreters. This one is from the Spanish section. We saw one of the French colleagues was President Macron. We saw Prince William walking past with one of the from the English language section, and so on. So they're all fulfilling their different roles, you know, most of which are never seen by the public. They're very quiet. If the Pope travels, there would be interpreters with him. We're looking at the papal altar, that large altar, where only the Pope normally presides, underneath which, as we said, is the confession or the resting place of St. Peter since the 1st century. And on the 2 sides are these arms that look like welcoming arms, if you like, these enormous arms connected to the basilica. On the far right-hand side, we were just out of visuals, was the bronze door. And these arms on the far left-hand side there is of Charlemagne. It's called the arm of Charlemagne, who was crowned king in St. Peter's on Christmas Day in the year 800, who began really the Holy Roman Empire, which was a refounding of the Roman Empire, but as a Christian empire, a cluster of states. There's the obelisk in the background, which really is a sign of torture and death. You know, many Christians saw that. Peter saw that before he was martyred. But it's also a sign of hope, because on the top is a cross. And it just quietly says that, that the last word is not death, but life.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful significance, and we really are seeing so much tradition being played out here. We were talking to the crowds that have gathered there, saying that this can hold up to 300,000 people in this long passageway that's there, the square. We'll then go back and Father, we were predicting about 1 million people could possibly be there.
It's hard to know.
It's hard to know now.
John Paul died, we were on the square, and there were 4 million who came to Rome.
Wow.
They shut all the freeways around the city. But yeah, it's very hard to know. And hundreds of thousands will have come to pay their respects in these last few days. Normally one needs a ticket to get to anything at St. Peter's. It doesn't cost anything, but you need that. But it were very large events. The diplomats, the protocol section normally, in a sense, just loses control and quietly lets people come in as they come in. Not the diplomats, but everybody else.
Well, there's Prince William. He's making his way down there, representing his father. Father, obviously, King Charles not being able to attend, but Prince William is there. And, I mean, there's just, it's incredible to see the world literally gathering to bid farewell to Pope Francis.
It's humbling too, because leaders who may not even agree with each other, they may not like each other. So when Pope John Paul was buried on the square 20 years ago, Prince Charles sat right behind or next to President Mugabe. They would have had very different opinions, but there they both were. You know.
Yeah, and this is unity. This is unity in a moment. Absolutely amazing. I want to go to Blaine quickly, because you've got some interesting things you want to show us. Obviously, the route, what we'll be taking today, and a few other things. So, Blaine, what have you got for us there?
Yes, indeed. I'm looking at, as they enter, the heads of state and government, it will be alphabetical in terms of the countries. But, of course, you'll start with Argentina, his home country. So, alphabetical order to ensure that there's no tension in terms who are sitting next to who. So, of course, America being A, and that's why you saw President Trump also coming in.
May I sort of get into this now, Father? I think we need to know what's happening, because it is 10 o'clock. Things are about to begin.
Those
now.
are the cardinals beginning to process President Zelensky.
Yeah.
The cardinals beginning to process out of the basilica, yes. And you know, a cardinal, the word cardo means a hinge in Latin. They are supposed to be the hinges of the church. They help the Holy Father to administer the church. And really their main job is to elect a pope, you know. And their role is important now as they discuss the way forward before they go into a conclave the week after next. So everybody is quietly, as you say, preparing to begin, you know, the liturgical Holy Mass.
Right.
And it's very solemn, you know. It's not gloomy, it's just very solemn and beautiful. But it's, you know, it is a changing of the guard, and the ages are changing, if you like.
Right.
So they will pay their own respects. Each of them wears a mitre, the ancient sign of a bishop, and they're wearing these red chasubles, red for the blood of the martyrs.
Right.
That's why they wear red, you know.
The interesting characters standing at the background, the Swiss guards,
Yes.
those dressed in Renaissance type garb. Interesting. I understand that from the 15th century, Pope Julius II founded this. Talk to us about the significance of them.
So the Swiss guards, you know, these things unfold in a sort of organic way over time. It's not that they were destined to necessarily work in Rome or be in the Holy See, but the Pope at the time needed protection, and he'd heard of them, and the Swiss are very reliable, you know, and they knew what they were doing, and so he said, well, could you please come and protect me? And they sent a set of these young men. And some century or so, not even half a century later, many of them were killed. They were martyred as Charles V invaded Rome while they were protecting the Pope. So they have a very close relationship to him. That is their ceremonial uniform you're seeing. But there are many more Swiss guards, even in the pictures we've been seeing in plain clothes. You wouldn't know. Yeah. Some of the senior ones are armed. They are extremely effective and very diplomatic and quiet.